بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله عدد خلقه رضا نفسه وزنات عرشه ومداد كلماته ومنتهى علمه وجمع ما شاء وخلق وذرع وبرع على الغيب شهادة الرحمن الرحيم المالك القدوس العزيز الحكيم وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك له الحمد يحيي ويميت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وحبيبه وخليله وأرسله بهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على دين كل الكرهات المشركين وبعد. وقال الله سبحانه وتعالى في الكتاب: يا أيها الناس إن كنتم في ريب من البعث فإنا خلقناكم من تراب ثم من نطفة ثم من علقة ثم من مضغة مخلقة وغير مخلقة لنبين لكم ونقر في أرحام ما نشاء إلى أجل مسمى ثم نخرجكم طفلا ثم لتبلغوا أشدكم ومنكم من يتوفى ومنكم من يرد إلى الأرذال عمري لكي لا يعلم من بعد علم شيئا وترى الأرض مدات فإذا أنزلنا عليها الماء اهتزت وربت وأنبتت من كل زوج بهيج. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah, and one of the things that's interesting that dawned upon me is that oftentimes in this society, dealing with education, when you're dealing with biology, studying the life and anatomy and dealing with the body and things of that nature, and then also when you're being educated, sex education and everything, this in one eye. Now, what's interesting is that you study this in order to study the body so that you become, knowledgeable about the body or things in creation, or also develop some sort of job, for you to have some sort of employment, to gain some kind of skillful employment. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you about this event, what takes place with life, there's something that we have no knowledge of, that we have to gain knowledge for someone has to explain this to us for us to understand this. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayat, He gives us this parable of life in and of itself, and also the ease and the ba'ath, the resurrection, right? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will literally have your bodies reassembled, right? Even a person who cremates themselves and throw their ashes all over the earth, right? All of them will come back together on the Qiyamah. If one doesn't believe this and the events that takes place with the belief of the Akhirah, then one is a disbeliever. Now, oftentimes people don't reflect on this, but here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you life where the life as we see it, and telling you that if you think if you think it's hard for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reassemble you after death, then you must not be amazed at how your origin, how you came about in life. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started out, he says to mankind, O mankind, if you're in doubt about the ba'ath, about the resurrection, then indeed Allah ta'ala created you from dust, right? And for those, those who know and those who don't know, our father Adam alayhi salatu wasalam was created from mud, from dust. Then from a sperm drop. So now here is how the in Aqidah is what they call dawro tasalsila, right? This is a proof that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala existed before time and will continue to exist ongoing after time, right? What dabra wa tasalsul, a thing of its origin and the continuation and continuity of that particular thing. Human beings will continue to be born. They'll also be continued to die, right? Without any help from creation. And if that was difficult for you to believe this, right? Because all things that are created is risen up, is brought up, and is also brought down, meaning that is brought to life and it also dies. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is free from that. He's not like creation, right? There's no beginning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no end, right? But with human beings, everything in creation, there's a beginning and an end. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that he created you from dust. Then next from a sperm drop, right? Something that's debated on. If you got it on your clothes, would you have to use water to remove it off of your clothing? Right? This is our origin. This is our beginning. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and from that you became like a clot, right? That little embryo. See, when you studying biology and things pertaining to life, you'll see that phase, right? They'll tell you about all of the sperm that every man carries, right? When he has intercourse with his wife, he shoots out millions of them, right? And they go to waste because only one egg can live. And so then you get to this part. So from that sperm drop, then you get to that alaq, right? That piece of flesh. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, that clot. And from that, then you turn into the lump of flesh. And from that lump of flesh is either formed or unformed, meaning that it comes to full strength or full form, or it dies, right? Some don't even make it to that form. Many of it die at that clot stage, right? How many women flush children down the toilet and not even know it, right? So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said that we may show you and will settle in the wombs, right? It'll be for a specific term. Now we know that term is anywhere between 9 to 10 months tops, right? But there's been times where it went on longer than that for people, right? They didn't do emergency C-sections all the time back in the day, right? So anyway, and it'll bring out a child, and then develop it, and they'll reach the age of maturity, right? So for that child, from the time that child is an infant, and it goes through all the stages, and that's including the preschool, the toddler, the preschool, all of those different stages that the today's society put on the growth of children in order to discuss child development, right? However, Allah Ta'ala talks about them reaching that age of maturity, where they become responsible now, right? Where you become responsible for your behaviors, those things, right? So now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, among you is the one who's taken in death early. They die early. They may not reach an old age. They may not even reach the age of maturity. They may die early. And among them is the ones who will return to an old decrepit age. Because if you even think about it and ponder on it, how we're born weak and we have to be cared for, and as our age we begin to decline, we have to be cared for again. We return back to that same state. But you don't believe, right, that Allah Ta'ala will resurrect us and reassemble us and judge us according to what we've done in this dunya? Something's wrong with our thinking. And so Allah Ta'ala here is giving you a biology lesson, but he's not only just giving you that biology lesson, but so is utilized in order to increase your iman, right? In order to increase your iman. Because the more you study science, and many Muslims will be in denial of it, but those who don't have any foundation in their Islam are very weak. The more you study today, what they call today's sciences, the stronger you become in kufr. The stronger you become in your disbelief, the stronger you start having more and more doubts. They'll start telling you things that are incurable, or they'll just flat out deny it, say this doesn't exist, and etc., etc. And we'll take the same attitude and we'll argue with one another in the masajid, right? We'll argue with each other amongst. That's why you have to be careful, right? Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, rahmatullahi alayhi, he made a statement. He said, only a fool will send his child to be educated by his enemy. So you have to create an alternative. The best alternative is to leave their system altogether. But if not, then put a system in place that where you're countering the nonsense that your children are being fed and that you're being fed, and that can only be done by you doing what? Learning Islam. It can only be done that way. It can only be done that way. If there was a thing where they had to draw soldiers today, many of us would be old wounded soldiers. We couldn't fight because our iman is weak and our Islam is almost obsolete, right? So here Allah Ta'ala is telling you basic forms of life. Now the kuffar, they'll tell you all of the thing about the sperm drop, the lump of flesh, the embryo, all of those things. They'll tell you about all that, but they'll deny the existence of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. The kuffar is trying to convince you to believe in them by relying on creation and forgetting about the creator. While Allah Ta'ala is telling you about life, but wanting you, and not so much wanting you as in a need, but more so desiring for you, for your own benefit, to worship him while you live in this dunya. And sometimes we don't think about it. We don't ponder on it and know our iman is weak because of detachment from the Quran. Because if you're just walking around just in creation without the Quran, you become confused. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions about you returning back to an old decrepit age. And then Allah Ta'ala, he says, and among you is the one who returned to the most decrepit age so that he knows. And after once having knowledge, he can't know anything. So therefore, I think this is a hint, hint, wink, wink about some people, how they end up in a demented state where they can't remember anything. Here Allah Ta'ala is telling you that there's a possibility of your ending. Either you're going to die young while you're in the full age of maturity, or you're going to die old and helpless. Right? So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, and you see the earth is barren. And when you send, and then Allah Ta'ala, he said, we send down rain upon it. And it smells, it grows, and everything becomes beautiful. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رضي الله تعالى عنه وسند التابعين وعلماء أمين وآئمة أربع مجتهدين ومقلدين إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Abdullahi ibn Masud رضي الله تعالى عنه, he mentioned in a rather lengthy narration that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now this is also something that you're going to learn, and it's going to discuss and talk about the growth and development in the anatomy of the human being, how we grow. But from a different perspective, although it's the same, but from a different angle, you'll learn something, you'll get a different ishara from it. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, he informed us that each one of you, this Abdullah ibn Masud saying that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this, he said about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he informed each one of you is gathered in the womb of his mother for 40 days. So now it's getting a little bit more specific, right? You know how you got to split up into trimesters? You have the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, right? Here's the origin of it. The Prophet ﷺ said that we're gathered in our mother's womb for 40 days as a sperm. Then we become a clot for another 40. And then we become that lump of flesh for another 40. So that's when you become a little embryo, right? Most women start getting excited after they see that sonogram from that ultrasound, right? And usually it just looks like a little seahorse. It looks like, just like a little old thing, right? I don't know. Some people are good. They be like, look at his eyes. I never seen the eyes at 3 months. I'm sorry. I just never happened for me. Many kids like I. All right. So anyway, then the next he said, then the breath, his spirit is put into him. Then he said, then the angel is sent to him, and his spirit is put in him the life, right? And is commanded with 4 matters to write down. Number one is provision. So you already know you already going to get what you're going to get. Number two, your lifespan. How long you're going to live, right? Number three, your deeds, right? And number four is whether you're going to be happy, a happy person, meaning you'll die upon La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, or you're going to be a miserable person where you'll end up going to the fire, right? He said, by Allah, besides whom there's no God, right? One of you may perform actions of the people of paradise until there's nothing between him and it except like a zira, an arm's length, right? And then what is written will overtake you. Now, what are you learning from all of this? First of all, because the more you do good and you do hasanat, right? See, when you stop doing what I refer to as the basic sins, when you stop doing zina, when you stop missing prayer, when you start praying on time and start praying consistently, and those type of things that are apparent, those hidden sins take over. So now you become arrogant, right? And in living in today's time, that's one of the biggest things that I don't think many people really struggle with it, because you kind of like get on this holy roller type of vibes, right? Where you're looking up, you're up right now, but you're looking down on everyone else, right? And so what the Prophet ﷺ is putting back into your minds is that you'll always remain Allah Ta'ala's slave, and he's in control of you. Because those four things, you're informed about them, but you don't know them to their true reality. The only thing you can do is just accept, have an iman, right? Be tasdiq, firm acceptance, and don't have any doubt about it. Allah Ta'ala has written your provision. This is why Allah Ta'ala tells us not to murder, not to kill children out of fear of poverty, right? Your provision is already written for you. You already got what you're going to get. And then when you have a child, that child's provision is written for them too. And you're going to benefit from their provision, especially if you're the caretaker of that particular child. Right? Now, no one has ever said that you won't struggle in between, where there's times when things will get hard, but that's also a test for you too, because that tests your iman. Do you really believe like you say you believe? Right? Are you going to get out here and start doing things that are haram in order to gain sustenance when it's already known that you will know what your provision is? This is where iman comes into play. And what's amazing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like how Allah ta'ala used to prove the point of the resurrection by using our biology, our human biology. The Prophet ﷺ is now teaching us with biology to show us that we all have a limitation, right, to our abilities, but also also taught us that our sustenance is written for us, our lifespan is written for us, our deeds are written for us, and our ending is already determined for us, right? We don't know it. We have to just act it out. We have to live life. So anyway, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that a person will do deeds of the people of paradise, right, until what is written for him overcomes him, right? And then he'll do what? He said he'll begin to perform deeds of the people of hellfire until he enters it. So never get comfortable. Never get comfortable. And this is what happens sometimes. And sometimes people can't explain it. They're like, yo, I was on my deen, and then you start coming up with things that, like, things that alter the seriousness of the problem, right? I was on my deen, but I got weak. I'm not praying no more. This is something that's not supposed to come roll off of one's tongue. However, when you're on, but you develop this sense of arrogance, right? You start doing that finger wagging, right? And you don't internally check yourself to keep yourself humble and have firm. You're not supposed to live in doubt. You're supposed to be firm, but there's things that you have to do in order to maintain that in order to maintain that istiqamah, that uprightness, that straight. It's a struggle to the end. No one ever become Muslim, just take shahada and sit still, and that's that. No, Islam is like fluid water, it has to flow. And whatever it touches, just like water, if a water hit a dry rock, it makes that rock wet, right? And it just keeps flowing. And that's how Islam has to be with your life. You should never, ever have a stagnant moment in your life. There's no such thing. It shouldn't be no such thing for a Muslim as a stagnant moment. You should be praying. If you praying at 5, then you should learn to start to pray them sunnahs. You praying them sunnahs, make sure you're making witr. You making witr, make sure you're making tahajjud, right? You memorize one surah, you go to the next one. You memorize one hadith, you go to the next one. You learn one masala in fiqh, then you go to the next one. You learn another masail in Arabic, then you go to the next one. There's never, never, ever a stagnant moment in one's life. It's always moving just like you are. Every blink and every breath you take is one that's next to you, is bringing you near to your end. You'll get to that old decrepit age where you won't be able to remember your own name. You'll begin to forget things. You don't even have to go into dementia. You'll start forgetting things that you've done years ago that just that, right? You won't be able to know that. So these things are important that you have to constantly internally keep yourself maintained and humble. And you have to keep the struggle. So anyway, to finish up the hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that a person may perform deeds to the people of hellfire until there's nothing between him and it except a dhira, an arm's length. And then what is written is overtaking him, and he begins to perform deeds and be amongst the people of paradise. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all Jannah. Ameen. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Qam as-salah.